Good evening. Thank you for joining the Reading Council meeting on January 19th, 2021. Please join me in a prayer in our pledge. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have the council member roll call, please?
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Gertz?
Here.
Mr. Lynn?
Here.
Mr. Albright?
Here.
Mr. Lindeman?
Here.
Mr. Fish Usher?
Here.
Mrs. Edichico?
Here.
Unless there's any objection, the minutes for the council meeting on November 17th, a regular session, are approved as distributed. Those minutes are approved. Unless there's any objection, the council meeting for December 1st, a regular session, are approved as distributed. Those minutes are approved. Unless there's any objection, the minutes for the council meeting on December 15th, a regular session, are approved as distributed. Those minutes are approved. Unless there's any objection, the minutes for the council meeting on December 28th, a special session of council, are approved as distributed. Those minutes are approved, and unless there's any objection, the minutes for the council meeting on January 5th, 2021 are approved as distributed. And those minutes are approved. Any audience participation? Then we will go ahead and have a reading of communications. I think we have a letter or two, I'm not sure. You're still on mute there, Carla.
Sorry, I just have one.
Okay.
It's from Patty Perrone at 1198 Old Wick Drive. And she says, I have a couple of questions regarding the lawsuit brought against the city of Reading or Reading City Council. Number one, citizens of Reading brought a lawsuit to council. I feel the citizens of the city deserve to know who hired the attorney to bring this lawsuit about. And if not, who they are, then we at least deserve to know how many citizens are represented in this case. Please let us know that ASAP. Number two, please clarify my understanding of this lawsuit brought up against council. My understanding from what was read is that citizens, we have no idea who or how many, are planning to sue the city of Reading if they move forward agreeing to work with the schools instead of suing them in court regarding 2 telephone poles and errors made by both parties during planning and construction of the property. Is this correct? I would appreciate clarification now at this time while I am watching this meeting. Thank you.
As of the meeting that we first heard of this, we did not know who the lawsuit was being brought by. And I don't believe there's been any change in that information at all. So unless the city lawyer has anything that, Joe, if you has anything you have to say, additional for that public request.
The only thing I would add for your benefit is I'm not aware of there being a second lawsuit filed. I'm only aware of the lawsuit that was filed by the city regarding the dispute. I am aware that there were some residents that sent some correspondence indicating they may file a lawsuit or they may get involved in this lawsuit, but I'm not aware that they have acted on that.
Okay, that's very good for that clarification. Thank you. Is the mayor on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I would then like to go ahead and turn it over to the mayor of Reading so that he can give his State of the City address. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chris, and hope everybody's doing very well and that things are going good for everyone. With the beginning of each new year, it is the mayor's responsibility to report to City Council concerning the affairs of the city, make appropriate recommendations. And to fulfill this duty, I offer the following. First, I want everyone to know that it remains an incredible honor for me each and every day to be your mayor. Reading was built by God-loving, country-loving, patriotic, community-loving, family-loving people who have wonderful moral values that they instilled in their children and who passed them along to their children. Reading has always been a great place to live, to work, to play, and pray. And it is again a great honor for me to work with so many of you to pass along all the wonderful opportunities we had growing up to our children and grandchildren. I want to thank our Safety and Services Director, Patrick Ross. He does an awesome job for us each and every day, and he's a blessing to have. I want to say the same for our Fire Chief, Todd Owens, our Police Chief, Brian Edens, our Chief of Public Works, Daryl Courtney, our Parks and Recreation Director, Susan Slavey, each of our office staff, Denise, Debbie, Diane, Barb, Michelle, and Shan are incredible to be around each and every day as they do awesome work for all of us. I want to thank all of our talented, dedicated city employees for all that they do for us each and every day, as we do our best to provide the best possible services with the resources we are given. Especially with all the challenges that COVID-19 presented, all of our city employees did an excellent job adapting to situation after situation and change after change. I want to thank each of our elected and appointed officials for your dedication to our city. You are all awesome. I also want to thank our Law Director, Dave Stevenson, our Mayor's Court Magistrate, Kevin McDonough, our Court Clerk, Michelle Nash, and our Reading Police Department for the fair and efficient way they conduct our Mayor's Court. We are all public servants at City Hall, and we work for you. In a testament to the excellent services we provide, we are now contracting with Arlington Heights to provide fire EMS services and police protection. And in 2020, we began providing paramedic services to all of Amberley Village. I want to thank our economic development consultant, Linda Fitzgerald, for all she does for our city, our road and stormwater engineers, JMA, Dan Brooks, who heads our building department and is our zoning administrator, and our exterior property maintenance code enforcement officer, Rick Martin. I also want to thank our Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank Brad Daniels, who is our president, and I want to thank Valley Central, who hosts our meetings. I want to thank our Reading Bridal Association, our incredible Reading Historical Society, the We Thrive Group, our Board of Zoning Appeals, our Civil Service Commission, our Community Improvement Corporation, our Planning Commission. Each and every one are staffed by wonderful people, do wonderful things. Most are volunteers and do awesome things for our city. I also want to thank our neighborhood watch groups and everyone who volunteers in any way to improve our city. I also want to thank our wonderful churches and their ministries that do awesome things for those most in need in our community. I want to thank our excellent schools. Great cities have great schools, and we have excellent schools in our community that we all should be thankful for. I want to thank our generous businesses, and they are generous. Every year they support our churches and our schools and our organizations. And I want to thank our incredible organizations and the many volunteers that make them possible. We must all continue to work closely and cooperatively together if Reading is going to be the best that we can be. We continue to be very successful in being awarded millions of dollars in federal, state, and local grants that are used for major road, water main, and sewer improvements, renovations and new purchases of equipment for our parks, the purchase of safety equipment, flood reduction projects, the removal of blighted buildings, and the acquisition of property to assist with economic development. And this year, we will accomplish some major projects thanks to our successes in getting grants and working with federal, state, county, and neighboring representatives. And a few of those are Thurn Ridge Drive will be totally redone this year, using approximately $950,000 in grant dollars, and another $950,000 in 20-year interest-free loans. We will replace part of the Hunt Road box culvert that is collapsing in areas. That box culvert takes the storm water from major areas of our hilltop. But with that project, we'll use $375,000 in grant dollars and another $375,000 in 20-year interest-free loan dollars. And that'll be a huge project coming up here very soon. New sidewalks will start on South Reading Road as we work towards improving that area of town. The Metropolitan Sewer District will do sewer projects on Reading Road near North Street, and it'll go down alongside of our pool parking lot and cut in between the pool and the backyards of homes on Bernard Avenue and solve stormwater issues both on Bernard Avenue and on areas towards Reading Road. We have also secured approximately $650,000 in grants to build a new road up near Incinerator Lane. That's for a pending General 2 expansion, and we'll let everybody know how that is going as it happens. And the Ohio Department of Transportation will construct a new bridge on Reading Road over Cooper Creek. So, and that's with state dollars. So anyway, some major projects this year. They're going to cause some inconveniences, but as always, we'll work through them. 2020 was a challenging year for most of us. By mid-March, we knew we had to make adjustments and sacrifices for an unknown virus, as we wondered how potentially serious it could be. In the following days and weeks, I and others at City Hall spent a lot of time on the phone with our Hamilton County Board of Health, and also watching our president and our governor with our infectious disease experts. Major changes in how we lived, worked, worshiped, and shopped followed. Cancellations of many events, job uncertainty, and emotional stress followed when it became apparent that the 2-week flatten the curve, stay-at-home orders to slow the spread of the virus was going to carry on indefinitely. Our churches, schools, and businesses closed to the public, causing each to find new creative ways to serve us. Athletic seasons were canceled, graduations were drastically changed, and even our public parks were temporarily closed. Our Safety Service Director, Patrick Ross, our department heads, and myself contacted and stayed in touch with our federal, state, and county representatives, and we want to thank them all to see what was available for us, when it would be available, and also what would be available for our businesses and what we needed to do to receive them. We all made adjustments, and as each generation before us, we worked through things as best we could. And again, it just showed with God's help, nothing can hold us down. Moving forward, it is again absolutely vital for every aspect of our city that we all cooperate and work with each other. I've always made it a top priority to do all we can from City Hall to assist our residents, churches, schools, businesses, and organizations. And we ask them to help us as well. And they always do all they can. And they're all incredible to work with. And just again, living proof how well we do when we're all working together. 2021 could be financially challenging for us as a city. in part because substantial dollars we received from our federal and state coffers cannot be counted on again in 2021. Some of those revenues include $875,000, approximately $875,000 in Bureau of Workman Comp checks, $575,000 in CARES Act dollars, and $300,000 in right-of-way dollars from Duke and MSD. So again, as with every year, we will be cautious with all of our spending. In 2021, we must continue our efforts in economic development. Payroll for Reading businesses has increased by approximately $73 million in the past 10 years, bringing over $1.4 million in new earnings taxes collected each year. We do all we can to keep the businesses we have, encourage them to expand here, and attract new businesses to locate here. And we've done very well at that. And again, a big part of that is the services we provide and our businesses love, again, what our city departments do for them. We will continue to aggressively market the former Nivison property to attract high-paying research and development jobs. And we have a reputable business very interested in expanding there. We've been very close several times over the years, and we're hoping that this time this will work. Research and development jobs are difficult to get and challenging to get, but we're going to continue to work very hard there. We will also continue to work with the Port Authority to bring new jobs to the former Dow Chemical site. Again, there's a lot of money needed to get that site, which was a tier 1 chemical facility, back to where it can be developed. We will also need the school's assistance in that project, so we will continue to work with them. We will also continue to work with General Tool on their expansion plans, and we are cooperating with the Ohio Department of Transportation, Amberley Village, Sycamore Township, Hamilton County, and the city of Cincinnati to accomplish major improvements on South Reading Road. We must also continue to get our police department, fire EMS departments, public works, and parks the resources they need to continue to provide the services our residents and businesses have become accustomed to. We will also continue to work very hard every day to keep our city as clean, neat, and as prosperous as we can. There isn't a mayor anywhere prouder of their community than I am of mine. While we have many challenges and many needs for improvements, we also have many wonderful, generous people and businesses that continue in many different ways to make Reading such an incredible place to live. Please do not hesitate to contact me anytime with any questions, comments, or concerns. And both our safety service director and myself are easy to get a hold of. Please contact us. My email address is rbemis@readingohio.org, or call me anytime. During business hours, during weekdays, it's 733-3725, 733-4044, or on my cell phone at 509-8619. My thoughts and prayers go out to everyone who suffered physically, financially, emotionally, or spiritually in 2020. It was a difficult year for many of us, and I'm in sincere hopes that 2021 will bring far better things for all of us. My condolences go out to everyone who lost a loved one. And as with every year, we lost a lot of wonderful people in 2020 from wonderful Reading families. Yet, while they all will be very, very deeply missed, it's very comforting to know that they're all in God's hands. Wonderful people. My sincerest thanks go to everyone who offered thoughts and prayers to my family over our loss of Gracie and Aaron. You are all awesome. And it's the reminder that it is great to live in a wonderful community that stays together through the best and worst of times. And it's always been a great strength for us. And again, we're thankful for all of you. I hope all of you will join me in praying that God will continue to bless our great country, We need to continue to be a prayerful country. You know, it reminds me of the statement that America is great because America is good, and that America will cease to be great when America ceases to be good. You know, we have a lot to do to protect the unborn, the most vulnerable among us, and to protect all of us. So anyway, and I hope God continues to also bless our great city and each and every one of us. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor, for your address. Without anyone moving to make a comment, we'll go to council committee reports. Finance Chairman, Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Mr. President. The only thing that I have this evening is the fact that we have not received our report back from the Budget Commission. I didn't expect to have it back. That's why we passed a 4-month temporary appropriations for those on council and city officials. I think they understand that concept, but the citizens may not. We do operate, so the information to the community that unlike many other states, we are required in July of each year to submit a proposed budget for the ensuing year that comes. So in July of 2020, we submitted a budget to the Hamilton County Budget Commission, and we also then, upon their review of what we estimate as income and expenses, they will get back and let us know what their position is. Many years ago, I remember some communities would deliberately submit a deficit budget so that they thought they would get more revenue from some other state sources or county sources. And rather interestingly, all they did was balance the budget for us and send it back and improve it for the numbers that they saw fit. But the interesting concept of the Budget Commission is the fact that they do oversee the community so they don't get themselves into financial problems. And I think this council, hopefully the citizens realize, as chair of the Finance Committee, I often question some expenditures and maybe propose some things that ought to be reviewed and put out. For instance, the purchase of the dump truck here, the last meeting, I would have liked to kicked it over for a period of time, 3 to 5 years, because as the mayor just pointed out in his report, there are monies we will not receive likely in 2021 that we did receive in 2020 to help us balance our appropriations. The budget is an item that we have to pursue and get approved by the Budget Commission. And in past years, specifically in 2020, if I recall correctly, I don't have it in front of me, but we were projecting approximately 3 to 5% increase in our revenue sources through the earnings tax, and that did not happen. Thanks to the treasurer, Mel, and our auditor, Sabrina, and our law director, we did ensue making sure that we wouldn't end up in a problem by contacting a couple of local financial institutions who know that our financial position in the Hamilton County, there are about 46 or 47 jurisdictions that we're a very financially sound community. We don't have a lot of debt out there that we have to deal with. And the debt we do have for road projects specifically has been financed by a portion of the earnings tax that goes into that fund, and it's pretty healthy. And we do have a separate fund for capital improvements, which Sabrina keeps a very accurate check on. So, in the sense of operating properly in a manner that puts us in a position to be thrift and sound is the positive thing. But the incoming year is going to be a difficult one. Also, why that was one of the reasons I didn't want to go along with some increases in salaries for some of our people this year, is because I don't know whether or not we're going to be in the financial position to meet all these obligations. But I think if we keep working hard and we keep working towards the development, I hope that that we do see some improvement in the north end of the old Carlisle Chemical PNC property that that could generate anywhere from 300 to 400 jobs if that comes to fruition. I hope that we're not extorted into doing things that would be foolish and to get cooperation. But nevertheless, that's what we need to keep pursuing, are jobs. Many years ago, I recall that a pharmaceutical company that was in the city employed many more people than they do today, but I'm not taking anything away from them. They're very valuable to us. We are pretty diverse in our overall revenues from various businesses, and we're not tied to a specific need for one large business that I recall, I believe, but it doesn't matter. Years ago, there was a community that was pretty much tied to a automobile manufacturing facility, and when that was getting close to closing, that put quite a dent in their operations, because it was a pretty large portion of their revenue. So we are pretty diverse for the most part. We're not sitting in a position where we have multi-million dollars in the bank, but that also causes us to be thrift, to spend dollars wisely, and hopefully that will continue. So I look forward to trying to maintain a sound financial position for the city in 2021, and I hope that continues. We have some very competent people who are still serving us, the treasurer, the auditor, the law director, and working towards keeping our finances under control. And basically, that's all I have tonight. I think we've got some interesting discussions we're going to have later on some legislation. So that's all I have tonight. Any questions? I'll be happy to try to answer them.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Gertz. Utilities, Lands, and Buildings, Chairman, Mr. Lindeman.
Thank you, Mr. Nesbitt. I will report that Rumpke, I won't say have been overwhelmed, but they have say pleasantly surprised with all the recycling that the city of Reading and other cities have recycled, mainly because of so many boxes being delivered to the houses. So they're very happy about that. And I did have one complaint down on Walnut Street that their recycling bin has not been picked up on a regular basis. It might be once out of every 4 weeks that they pick it up. I checked into it, and evidently it's not the first complaint. But because of turnover with drivers and not being familiar with all the alleys that have to be picked up, there were some suggestions made on how maybe it could be remedied, but Rumpke was very aware of the problem. And they said they tried to do the best they could to remedy it, but I think the result are probably lost customers. That does happen. Sorry to say, and that's all I have to report.
I have a question for Mr. Lindeman. I forgot to check with him. I was talking to him this week. Do you know if the people on the bench project have finally been paid, Don, or maybe Sabrina knows that answer?
Yes, they have, and Sabrina made me aware of that. Sorry, I should have mentioned it, but I'm sure the people that wanted to be paid are very well aware of it. And I thank Sabrina because I know that she and Patrick went to extra efforts to make sure that happened in the first month this year. So they had promised that it would be taken care of in the first quarter, and then obviously this is the 19th, so it happened probably in the first week of January.
Thank you.
Chris, you're mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Zoning, Plan, and Environment, Mr. Powell.
Chris, I have no real report this evening other than just say we're all hunkered down right now. Hopefully things will get back to normal and we can start having committee meetings again, and hopefully this zoning issue, the rewrite of the zoning code will, come to a head here shortly, and we can start working on that again. So thank you.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Powell? Thank you, Mr. Powell. Laws and Contracts Chairwoman, Ms. Edichico.
Thank you, Chris. First, I had someone ask me about an ordinance regarding the garbage picking after they had someone go through the trash and throw it all over their driveway. The city doesn't have a specific ordinance in place for that particular issue. However, we do have ordinance in place for littering and trespassing. Ordinance 660.03 regards litter. If the cans were not moved to the curb and the pickers were on their property, they are trespassing, and you can call the police for that. Once the cans are moved to the curbs, however, then folks can go through them. But we do have ordinance 1070.01 that says that they cannot go through recycling bins. Items can only be collected by authorized agents. No person other than city or its authorized agent shall remove any items from recycling bins without the consent of the safety service director. So I wanted to clear that up for a couple people that were discussing that on Facebook. Second, tonight we were voting on a resolution regarding the utility poles. A lot has been said about this issue, and I hope tonight we can move forward and rebuild our relationship with the school. I know some here have accused me of favoring the school, and I would just like to say that I was elected by the citizens of Reading, and I'm here for them. Now, some here might not think that the 300 plus people who signed the petition matter, as well as the voices of the city administration. Countless people have commented on Facebook posts, spoke at meetings, emailed us, had their comments read at meetings, stopped me at Kroger or Walmart or basketball and football games, etc. I truly feel for the residents who were affected by the construction of the school. I truly do, but we have to look at the bigger picture. I would like to know who wrote the letter that was read at the last meeting, and I would like to know how it contained information that hadn't been read to council or released to the public yet. I wonder if it's someone who was directly affected by the situation, or if it's someone who's the driving force behind this issue, and someone who also worked at the school during the construction that failed to abstain from voting on matters pertaining to the school and its construction. Someone who sends communications to only a select few members of council, and someone who is threatening a lawsuit against the city if we should come to a settlement with the schools. I've been asked by other citizens if they can countersue on their own behalf because they don't want their tax money wasted. So where do we draw the line? I've heard the phrase that says, so go the schools, so go the city. We cannot have a town where people want to live and raise families and move to if we don't have a good working relationship with our school. Our school is one of our city's biggest employers. I'd like to look to the future of what we can accomplish if we work together. Some here also worry about setting a precedent, but we have the opportunity tonight to make it very clear that we are not. When I was on the Zoning Board of Appeals, approving a variance for a privacy fence for one homeowner didn't mean that everyone on the block got to build a privacy fence. We were very clear that we voted on a case-by-case basis, and we can do that tonight. I'm aware that I was not on council during construction, and therefore I was not involved in a lot of the issues that have caused the strife and led us to this point where we are now. That said, the school now has a new superintendent, a treasurer who was not there at the start of construction, and an almost entirely new school board. We cannot continue to hold on to grievances at the expense of the taxpayers. Now is our chance to move forward and work together. That's all I have for tonight.
Any questions or comments from Ms. Edichico? Thank you, Ms. Edichico. Public Health and Safety Chairman, Mr. Fishesher.
Thank you, Chris. First, I'd like to extend my sincere sympathy to Ken Stahl and his family upon the death of his wife, Martha. She was truly a really nice lady, very pleasant, always smiling, and I'm sure that she's going to be missed by many. For my report, for police, a few highlights of their operations. On the 6th, they had a traffic stop at 3rd and Benson. The subject was wanted for robbery and felonious assault for shooting a victim in Norwood. Subject ran and also pulled a firearm during the foot pursuit. No one was injured in this arrest. On the 7th in the area, 8400 Reading Road, there was squad run for an overdose. Subject who was a rental, I think he had just moved in, had overdosed. It was the girl's boyfriend. The subject was cited for disorderly conduct. On the 7th also, they had a call on Bradley Avenue for shots fired into a residence. Suspect has been developed, but the investigation is continuing in the detectives division. On the 12th, subject was arrested intoxicated after causing an issue with a knife. 7900 Reading Road, the area of, on the 14th, they had a theft of betting items. And the same day, the same suspect committed the same offense in a second location. So I guess he needed a bed. On the 17th, they were called for an auto accident in the area of Waxwing and Honey Hill. It was a hit and run. The subject was located and arrested for OVI and leaving the scene of an auto accident. You know, and the last thing for the police is that the new cruisers are still awaiting equipment installation. As for fire, as I mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, that our fire department has been designated as a COVID vaccination site for Hamilton County. They received their first doses on December 23rd. They received 60 of them. They were administered to Reading, Amberley, and Lockland Fire Department personnel. The remaining uncounted for doses were administered to Reading Police personnel and other essential city employees. Every dose was administered, none was wasted. They will be receiving a second 60 doses tomorrow, and will begin administering late afternoon to those residents ages 80 and older. They anticipate having all 60 doses administered by February 3rd. As we move into the vaccination of public, you'll need to make your appointment to receive your vaccination online at www.testandprotectcincy.com. You can also go to the Hamilton County website and look it up through them. Please do not call the fire department to schedule an appointment. Last year, the fire department began a passive monitoring for carbon monoxide during EMS runs. They had installed CO detectors on their first in bags, which are carried on every EMS, carried in on every EMS response. Recently, they had 2 instances where the device is alarmed. One location had levels of over 300 parts per million, and the other had over 500 parts per million. The occupants didn't even realize their symptoms were due to high levels of carbon monoxide. So just a reminder to everyone with natural gas appliances, please install a CO detector. Detectors are readily available, reasonably priced, and some now have 10-year batteries. Our fire department does not provide CO detectors. And that's all I have, Chris.
Randy,
Go ahead,
Did you
Mr.
read-
Lindeman.
do you mind repeating that again, the address for people to sign up? I'm sure that some older people might not be able to write as fast as you talk.
www.testandprotectcincy.com.
Is that
Um,
A-N-D?
Also,
Yeah,
TESTAND
Go ahead, Randy.
ANDPROTECTCINCY.com or
Thank you.
HamiltonCounty.com.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Fish-Escher. Service Chairman, Mr. Olbrink.
I have no formal report. I'll have something to say a little later in the meeting.
All right, thank you very much. And Recreation Chairman, Mr. Lynn.
Thank you very much. I do have two ordinances that I am presenting to the council tonight. One is basically establishing the fees and charges for 2021 for the city's parks, programs, and recreation facilities. In that ordinance, I am not recommending any charges be increased. We are staying the same that we charged in 2020. The other ordinance, I am trying to amend the 2020-07, which is basically the wages for the seasonal help at the park, at the pool. And the only change I'm making on that is that there was a 10 cents increase in minimum wage. So I'm asking that an increase be given to the concessions and maintenance workers at the pool. I am not asking for an increase for the manager or the lifeguards at the pool. So I am asking council to support both of those. I'm not increasing anything except to the requirements that we need to for minimum wage. The other thing is that on February 1st, we will start taking reservations for the parks and for our recreation facilities. So we sort of need these fees set. So when they do call, we can give them the set fees that they need to pay. But I am telling the general public that on February 1st, you can call city council and start reserving parks. I also want to let people know we are still taking applications for the jobs at the city pool. So if you could pick up an application at city council and fill it out, the sooner the better. So that's all I have for my report at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lynn. Mr. Lynn, I see that the two ordinances are on the agenda. Were those sent out to all council? Okay, I might have been missed on that then because I don't think I got those. Okay, thank you again, Mr. Lynn. Any new business, any businesses that anyone feels needs to go into a committee for the city? Then I will go to reports of officials, law director, Mr. Stevenson.
Thanks, Chris. I don't have much of a report tonight, but I would advise you that the oral arguments in the Duke Pipeline case have been set for March 31st. I don't know at this time whether or not those are going to be remote or in person. I will say that the Supreme Court oral arguments, even if they're in person, are typically accessible through their website when they happen. So you're seeing them in real time. Again, that oral argument set March 31st. I would like to pass on my condolences to the family and friends of Dan Schuster, who passed away last week. He was with JMA for many years and did a lot of work for us.
I'm sorry to hear that, Dave. Dan was a good.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Treasurer, Mr. Gertz.
Thanks, Chris. Just a brief update of where we are month to date. And actually, it's good news. Taxes, we've collected almost $95,000. Net profit, income taxes, we've collected a little over $6,000. And withholding income taxes, we've collected about $598,000. So we're up to a total of $698,867.58. So we're already $26,124.91 ahead of the total month of January last year. So not to get people's hopes up too high, but we are running about 4% ahead month to date, and we still have 8 business days left in the month of January. So hopefully we can keep this trend going, and it's not just a peak here as we begin the new year. And that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, and would you say that some of that might have been a carryover from last year?
Probably, maybe a tad, but not much.
Okay.
I mean, the withholding was the big one.
Yeah.
What was that?
It helps because last year didn't quite make it, so.
Yeah, we were about 100,000 short last year for the entire year, so about 1% behind. So, but withholding for January has been good and strong, so that's good news.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gertz. And Auditor, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Chris. My only update for tonight is I'm reopening the books for 2021 to get everything started. There's a lot of payables that happen in the beginning of the year that are, membership dues or things that we pay once a year. So getting all that updated, as well as getting all the yearly reports done. And we're already starting to work on the 2020 GAAP process, which is the general accounting kind of ledger for the city of Reading. And then that way it kind of helps build us for our audit. So we do this gap part every year, and then next year would be our 2-year audit. So that's pretty much it for me, Chris, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. We will go to reading of our resolution.
I'd like to make a comment before we begin, Mr. President.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Gertz.
Yeah, I looked at the resolution and I looked at the agreement, but I think that the document is incomplete. And how can we read a document that doesn't have an Exhibit A that's fully complete? And I am of the opinion that I did talk to Mr. Braun, and Mr. Braun, I thank you for all your opportunity of getting back to me, and we talked to some of these things in some detail. But I think we maybe, I don't have all, I think it's incomplete, and I don't know if we're reading an ordinance that's incomplete. I don't have the, as I was mentioning, exactly where this new underground system is going to run. I can guess at it. But most recently, and I think I have told council in the past, I had a client and I have communicated with him, and he has looked at this project again, because I'm trying to make sure that my position and my thoughts are that regardless of how this thing's come out, that we have a situation where, the cost factors of completing this project is reasonable. I don't understand why the safety service director, it's a project that belongs to and should be completed by the school, that they wouldn't oversee and take care of all the bidding and complete all of that. I think that we're moving forward tonight on this ordinance and reading it even for the first time as premature, and we should actually make sure we have everything before us before we can logically decide. Some of us may not agree even how they're going to make the installation. There may be other methods that could be less expensive, or I don't know, possibly more expensive. But the way, I don't know where they're running the line. I mean, there's no exhibit to this thing.
You and me are doing the same thing.
Pardon?
Does anyone have any reason to say anything?
Well, Chris, I agree for other reasons. There isn't any questions answered in there as far as the TIF is concerned. I know that Mr. Lynn was concerned about some hard about getting paid back. There's the verbiage, separate negotiations, negotiating in good faith. I don't know. There's some of us that question the good faith in the last 3 or 4 years. Some 25% initial offer. I mean, I think some of these things, there's one line in here, if you don't mind, that I'll read partially here. In full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including section 121-22 of the Ohio Revised Code. I'd have to look into that to see what they're talking about. I've got a lot of notes on this that I don't really know what the answers are. And it's kind of like Pelosi with 7,200 pages. We have to pass it before we can read it. I'd rather have time to look into this a little more. Question, I did put a call into Mr. Stevenson today, but evidently he had left the office, so I wasn't able to ask him any questions. But I agree. I don't see any reason. To tell you the truth, we have come a long way since 2017 when this began questioning. And we're just a stone's throw away from having this issue decided one way or another. I'm all for just letting it go and having it decided. I mean, if the school is correct, they have nothing to lose by going forward. As far as I'm concerned, the city doesn't have anything to lose either. If we go forward and the judge decides that they're correct, well, then they don't have to take the polls down, so they don't have to have any money to spend, and we don't have to match it. If they decide that we're correct, well, then they have a fund for these contingency problems that could come up. There's a fund that they have that's in that $54 million to pay for this sort of thing. So the city doesn't have to pay for anything there either. I don't see any point in with as many things that I see wrong with this document. I think we should just go forward and let chips fall where they may.
Yeah, anyone else that has any comments?
I mean, yeah, I do, Chris.
I'm going to go to Mr. Albring first. Mr. Fischescher.
That's fine.
Mr. Albring.
Go ahead, Dennis.
You're on mute.
Dennis, you're on mute.
There you
Okay.
go.
What I wanted to say was that I was very disappointed and I think, in effect, angered at the position and the stance that the school has taken in this issue. I think they basically have almost, in effect, blackmailed the city into working with them and getting this agreement. I think in light of all of that, that unless we really work hard, the relationship that we have with the schools is going to be, and maybe right now is, negatively affected. Now, I think part of what we need to do as a council and what usually has to happen is that we have to be willing to compromise and get this thing taken care of and get on with things. The big thing, so far as I'm concerned, is to get the polls down, and this agreement, we'll do that. We're going to both continue to spend money if we don't go ahead with this. So, like I say, I think the school took a rather self-serving, self-centered position in this whole matter. I don't think it was for the betterment of the city in terms of their position on the TIF or denying the city of the TIF, because those are things that are important for the development of the city in various areas. And, they're going to get some money anyway, some additional monies because of that. Whereas right now they're not getting much, if anything at all. So I think it behooves us really to try to work things out, to try to compromise and go from there and get on with this and get it behind us.
Okay, Mr. Fischescher.
Hey, thank you, Chris. Everybody knows how I feel about this, and I will grant you, Mr. Gertz, Mr. Lindemann want to kick the can down the road a little bit longer. I'll remind you that back in last December, we hurried up and had our third meeting to vote to disagree with the zoning board and changing the PDD or amending the PDD so that Mr. Ashbrook could vote, knowing that when Ms. Chico came on council, the chances are we were going to agree with the zoning board. We wouldn't even be here right now. But here we are over a year later, and we still want to kick the can down the road. And the only reason we want to kick the can down the road is to try to get them into court. Now, I have said time and time again that I've disagreed with the way that the school board is handled and the way that the school board has worked with the city. But as Mr. Albring pointed out, somebody has to reach an arm out and offer the olive branch. And I think would behoove the city to do that. We're looking at dollars down the road if we sue them. And if we do, what are we going to gain? Are you willing as a council, as a representative of the citizens and a guard of the citizens' money, to call their bluff as to whether they're going to pass the PDD or not, or the TIF or not? I'm not willing to take that chance. Yeah, they're blackmailing us. Okay, we can deal with that down the road. But I'm not willing to take the chance right now, take them to court, win, go do our victory dance, and then find out that we've lost development on the Dow property because they can't get a TIF. I think it's time that, we need to work together. We're a small community. It's a school system and the city can't work together. Shame on us. And I think it's time. I think it's time we move on. We have dealt with this school and the development of this school for the last at least 4 years. And I think it's time that we move on as a council and start looking at some other things that we can do.
Mr. Lynn.
I've been thinking hard, studying, looking at all the numbers. I've been looking at this very hard. I want to work with the school, but I also want them to follow the PDD that they signed on. And when they tried to make the amendment that did not pass, they need to comply with the amendment. I'm looking at these numbers and I'm kind of confused because, I heard Chuck LaFata, who was the superintendent at one time, said that this money is going to come out of the general fund. And as I talk to the treasurer of the school now, yeah, up front, the money might have to come out of the general fund, but down the line, it can go under a contingency fund that they have that they can make a request to get the money back into their general fund. But Chuck LaFata doesn't tell our citizens that. He tells our citizens that it has to come under their general fund. It's going to take money away from their teachers, that the city is trying to get their teachers fired because they're taking money from the general fund. The truth is, upfront money, like we might have to pay half the polls now, will come out of our general fund, but they could be reimbursed by the contingency fund to get that money back if the OFCC approves it. These are situations that I think that the public has been misinformed. Am I willing to work with the school? Yes. So then I'm trying to figure out a way to work with the school, and I know we're trying to get this TIF fast, and we need the school's approval to have that because that's property tax that they get, which hopefully if that passes, more property tax actually goes to them. Then they come to us and say, we're not going to pass that TIF unless you drop the lawsuit. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're holding the city. You're holding us. You're being unfair. You're not making the city grow. That's being vindictive. Does the public understand that? That's vindictive. The school board's being vindictive. We're trying to work. I was trying to work with them. Now we're here coming up. Yeah, we will take $24,000, $25,000 out of the city general fund. They'll take $25,000 out of their general fund, which they could be reimbursed if they go to their contingency fund. We're not going to be reimbursed until a possible TIF is decided from years from now. The school board has been not working with us. So yeah, I'm very angry with the school board. I don't think they've been upfront. They have not been honest. We have a superintendent that cussed us out during a city council meeting. That's not appropriate. That's not professional. There's nothing been professional about this at all. Now I'm willing to work and I'm looking at this and I'm understanding that, yeah, if this TIF goes, they'll get their money back. We might be able to reimburse ours, but all in all, it comes out into the school's favor. You look at what they did with this contingency fund, and I've looked through pages and pages of this that I've gotten, and where they're spending money, it's unfathomable to me how they're spending money. In fact, the parking lot across the street that currently Mount Notre Dame uses, they didn't even pay for out of this construction fund. They used the money from Hilltop to pay for that. Things are confusing to me. Things I don't understand as I'm trying to break down where they spent their money, how they did it. Am I willing to work with the school? I am, but you cannot. They need to work with us. You can't give the public bad information, which they have done. They have not been fair to City Council. We are willing to work with them. I have been trying to work with them, but they must be upfront.
All right. Mr. Powell, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Chris, can I add one more comment? I ask one more comment, please.
I was asking Mr. Powell if he had a comment first.
Go ahead.
I have a lot to say on the matter, but unfortunately, I'm muzzled by the Ethics Commission. I've got the ruling, and I can't. I've got a whole lot to say about it and could provide a whole lot of information, and unfortunately, I can't ethically comment.
Okay. Does anyone have a problem with Mr. Lindeman making a second comment here?
No, he can talk all he wants, in my opinion. Go ahead, Donald.
I only hear that one. So go ahead, Mr. Lindeman.
Well, I go back to what I said, some of the terminology, good faith. It's just an initial offer. There will be separate negotiations. These are the people that we've been dealing with, and you just heard from some of the other councilmen how they've treated us. In addition to that, the second comment is that they want us to sign a release on pretty much anything that would happen up there in the future. And the project has not been completed yet. I think that there's some fencing that has to be put in, some trees and things that have to be put in. And they're asking us right now, this document, to release them for any further repercussions. How can we do that? And if we let this go, how can we face anybody up there that lives across from the school? I think we've done our job correctly so far. There's a lot of people maybe not happy with us, but I think we've done our job the way it should be, and we followed the ordinances. We've done the right thing. And anyway, I've said my piece.
I'd like
Chris, if I could talk.
Wait a minute, I'd like to make a comment first to clarify Mr. Fischesser's statement.
I'd like to clarify first. Does anyone mind if Mr. Gertz goes ahead and makes a second?
We've never been involved in something like this, Mr.
Go ahead, good, Mr. Gertz.
Able to speak when we had an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, but it may change in the new year, so go ahead.
Well, it may change in the new year. You can conduct the meetings, but we still can change the rules of council and control that too. I don't want to go there, but what I do want to say, Mr. Fischesser talked about the fact that the Planning Commission basically approved the variance, and then we give the impression we railroaded the opportunity to turn that down. He fails to tell us, though, and the public and everyone else, that number one, the Planning Commission meeting was not appropriate. That whole thing had to start all over. That whole action on the Planning Commission is invalid. That they were going to have another meeting, which never occurred. It was mishandled because the notices didn't go out correctly. So that whole previous Planning Commission meeting where they had it and voted to grant a variance, and only 3 of the 5 voted to grant the variance, and 2 of which were absolutely from the administration, the same administration that told the residents and everyone up there that was a temporary installation. And since it was not properly put out to notice, that the whole action was invalid. So even though we did meet, and Mr. Fischesser is trying to point out we kind of railroaded this through because we had a meeting before the end of the year with Mr. Ashbrook being currently the councilman at that time. It was really unnecessary because the planning commission's action to grant the variance wasn't legal. And they still haven't had a meeting. They've never had a meeting in the planning commission to grant any kind of a variance. But the school board and communications they've sent to the city, just through Mr. LaFada back, I got communication here, admits that they didn't follow the PDD. The communication back in April 27th of 2020, he states that, and I have a copy of, thanks to Mr. Ashbrook, by the way, that they didn't understand that these poles had to be underground. Well, where were they? Mr. LaFada was a project manager. He got paid an extra $1,000 a month to be the project manager, and he didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. He's representing the school. I don't buy that. And when we get into these things and we make these references, Mr. Fischesser, about actions taken, which you're alluding to it being something that potentially, or at least suggests that this is somewhat illegal. It was not illegal. The actions of the planning commission was illegal. We were just responding to it, and 4 out of 6 councilmen that could vote voted to turn down that, which was an illegal meeting, voted to turn that down, that variance. So it was not a case of us manipulating something, and I take offense to that. I truly do. So go ahead. I'll like to continue to comment. I got some other things, but go ahead if somebody else wants to speak.
Yeah, I'll have one more council member. Anyone have a problem with Ms. Chico addressing council again on this issue? Go ahead.
No, she hasn't done it yet.
Well, she did earlier, I think, but go ahead, Ms. Chico.
Yeah, I said my piece earlier, but I did have one question as to how that was an illegal meeting for the planning commission. When I was there, I remember seeing the notification about the meeting, and there was a lot of people at that meeting that spoke before the planning commission. So obviously they all were notified as well. So I'm confused as to how that was an illegal meeting and why that was never brought up earlier in the year.
If you contact the safety service director, he will advise you that that was not an improper, or it was an improper meeting. Notice did not go out to the community in a correct way. It was not put out in a proper, what we call communication of public, of general circulation. And I don't care what they voted on. If they don't do proper notice, the action that they took was not appropriate. So you can talk to him, or why would he be out again trying to set up another public hearing last, was it January or whenever it was when the COVID started, because he knew that it was not an appropriate meeting. They had to meet and act.
No.
Yeah, it was.
That is false. The meeting you're talking about is to redo the zoning. That's the meeting that they didn't get the public awareness out on. And it wasn't the administration's fault. It was the publication fault. And Mr. Stevenson could probably shed some light on that. That was the meeting. The whole thing with changing or amending the PDD was a legal meeting that took place. The reason that, and the only thing that I'm saying is that if it wasn't railroaded, why did we meet the day after Christmas? Who in God's name would have had a meeting then? But we wanted to get that last vote in so Mr. Ashbrook could be on to vote it. Now, as far as Mr. Lindeman, you missed the last line in this, and I would, after I'm done talking, I would really like Joe, who wrote this this legislation, to give a little opinion on this. But the last line says, when he's talking about not being able to talk to them or dispute anything, neither now nor unknown, including without limitation, those arising out of and related to this dispute. Not to anything, to the dispute that's going on right now. So with that, I would like our attorney, Joe, to shed some light on it for us.
Yes, Joe does want to go ahead and speak. So go ahead, Mr. Braun.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 things I would like to address with you. Number 1, the release language was raised. This is a limited release. The release is defined as only relating to the utility lines that were not placed underground on the property where the school was constructed. It was brought to my attention earlier today that there's a possibility that the landscaping plan was not followed and things like that. You are not releasing those claims. You're not releasing any future claims that may arise related to issues that do not involve those utility lines. So I do want to be clear that the release is not broad, it's very specific. Number two, Councilmember Gertz raised the issue about Exhibit A. Just before we came on camera this evening, I did receive an email from the school's attorney with a copy of Exhibit A. This is a first reading tonight that you're having. You can approve it and vote on it without Exhibit A being attached, but to the extent that you want to see that, I received it from the school board this evening. I think it's only fair that given the fact that the superintendent and Mr. Ross are the two people that physically visited the property and made sure that everything was marked correctly on where the poles will be and they're properly located where the line will be underground, they needed to sign off on that. It can easily be added into your packets for the next meeting on a second reading. It can also be approved tonight without the Exhibit A attached because it is incorporated in. I can also represent to you, having seen that drawing as your attorney, that it only depicts the two poles that are the subject of this action that we have talked about in confidence. And it does include an overlay from the tax map so that people can see exactly where that line will be buried. One other thing, just as a matter of housekeeping, Councilmember Lindeman asked what 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code is. That is the Open Meetings Act, and that is just indicating that this is being voted on in an open meeting and complying with all open meetings laws, which we are, to the best of my knowledge, doing this evening. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer them, but those are the ones I wrote down that were raised by members of council.
Yes, I would like to make sure that you go ahead and send out Exhibit A this evening and put it in a packet with all the other information so that everyone has it all together. I would appreciate that.
I will definitely do so and would have done so had I received it earlier.
Okay.
Before tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Lindeman.
It kind of goes to my point that I think myself personally would like to have a little more time. Obviously, the two questions that I had, he answered those questions, but one of them I wasn't clear on. I had made a mistake in not reading it carefully enough. So maybe there's some other things in here that if I had more time, I would be more aware of what's in there.
Okay, Mr. Gertz.
Mr. Braun and Joe, as a legislator, and if you were serving as a legislator, wouldn't you want to see all of the documents, including the Exhibit A, before it would even be presented? Maybe what you're saying, and that you're the one that's presenting this document, that, yeah, we could probably have a reading and vote on it, but what logical person who is a legislator would want to vote on something till they had everything before them and understood it completely and had a chance to view it, understand it? Maybe as a legislator, you could even agree to go along with this, but you don't like where they're going to place it and leave a pole that's going to be out in the right of way. Maybe it's going to cost some additional money at some time in the future, or maybe it should run all the way directly from the original easement line under the Columbia Avenue and go to a pole that's on the other side of Columbia Avenue. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I had a plan. I met with him again today. We went over. Actually, I invited Mr. Lindeman if he wanted to come. He has 4 or 5 other alternative ideas of how this could be built, and this is what he did his whole career, working both with Cincinnati Gas and Electric, with Duke, and as a private owner of a line crew company. They had 15 trucks, and they subcontracted with Duke. So I think it's only logical, if I'm going to be an intelligent legislator, that I ought to at least see what the Exhibit A looks like and where they want to run the line. Don't you think that makes sense, Joe?
May I respond, Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, to address Mr. Councilmember Gertz, I certainly would never purport to tell you how to vote or when it's appropriate to vote, but what I will tell you is that if this is a first reading, it can go forward, and prior to your final vote, Exhibit A will certainly be circulated to each member of council and made part of the final document. I would point out, I think I was a little unclear earlier, the location was chosen by the 3 utility providers. It wasn't something that was arbitrarily chosen. And then also with the input from the city and the school's representatives. So I don't, obviously if you want to take as part of the agreement and move where the line is being buried, we would need the consent of each of the 3 utility providers.
Yes, and I think Mr. Lynn, you may have had something.
I'd pass.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, then we will go ahead and have the reading of the resolution.
Wait a minute. I'd like to make a motion we not read this tonight. That'll give us more opportunity to review the whole thing and go forward. I don't think it's arbitrary that the president of the council can just direct this. It is the legislative branch. You're part of the administration.
This is the first time I've heard your motion, Tony. And I don't hear a second yet.
Well, I'm about to make my motion. I think we should hold this.
You did. I've heard it.
I agree. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Gertz, second by Mr. Lindeman to not read this ordinance until all of the attachments are in the same packet. I'll take a roll call. Discussion. Go ahead.
Discussion.
Mr. Fischhesher.
First off, Mr. Braun, I would like to thank you for getting this literature, the legislation to us on Friday. It gave me ample time to review it. So I do want to thank you for that. I don't see any problem. We've got 2 weeks before our next meeting. I'm sure that number one, Mr. Braun will have Exhibit A that you're concerned about. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what 2 telephone poles we're talking about, but just to be safe, we'll wait. But if you can't, why keep delaying it? I'm intrigued about that. Why are we trying to delay it?
Would I respond?
So call the vote.
Go ahead, Mr. Gertz. It was a direct question.
Pardon?
It was a direct question. Go ahead.
I totally agree with Mr. Lindeman. The fact is, the city isn't, and we're trying to do everything we can. I got a grandson that plays football for Reading. I've got kids I taught religion to that goes to Reading. I've got great grandnephews and nieces that go to Reading. It has nothing to do with the dislike of anything of the school. I mean, I'm just as much a fan of Reading as anyone else, the Reading school system. But the city is in a win-win situation. It was pointed out by Mr. Lindeman. If we lose the case, the school don't spend any money, they leave the polls up. And we don't spend any money that I don't even know that we have readily available. Another problem with the resolution, in my opinion, it doesn't tell how we're going to pay for it. I believe that any resolution and ordinance should have a site in it telling from what funds we're taking it, not just the general fund. It'll either be a special capital fund, it'll be taken from some other, I don't know if we're going to take it from the retirement fund, money we were accumulating, but it doesn't have a site of what fund it's coming from. It just says we're going to pay $30,000 up to that amount. And secondly, the win-win situation is if we win the case, we don't pay anything, which we shouldn't. And the school, as was pointed out, let me finish. The school points out, or was pointed out by Mr. Lynn to the school, they have these other contingency funds. And again, you can say what you want, Randy, about Mr. Ashbrook. He did some research on this and did it through opportunities that it's a public matter that has to be disclosed. It's our understanding, and I like to verify this, and I'd like Joe to see if it's true, that both the state, the contractor, and the school has opportunities with contingency monies, and it was up to an amount of $700,000. Now they spent some of that money already or committed it, and I think there's about $400,000 left. I'd like to see the numbers before we make a logical choice of whether we're going to commit $30,000 of city's monies and we don't even know what fund they're coming from or what account. So to arbitrarily say, well, let's just move along, let's get it over with. We got to make peace with the school. God forbid they'll use their extortion to prevent us from getting a TIF. We don't even have a TIF. There's nothing out there yet. Now, I did want to explore with Joe, and I forgot that question, and you don't have to answer tonight, but I'd like to talk to you later in the week. you were just discussing at one point in time that you already thought we had an opportunity with a TIF with the school because of the $1 million approximately we bought to put in all the infrastructure around the school, including new, traffic poles, new curb and gutter up and down Benson Street, curb and gutter all along Columbia Avenue, improvement of Balsa Drive with a greater entrance so they can have better ingress and egress. To say like the city hasn't contributed is ridiculous. I mean, we've been extremely supportive of it, but you made a reference at one point in time where you already thought we had a TIF with the school. And it's my recollection, you were somewhat surprised that when we did all of this, we did not have a TIF with the school already. By the way, for the public, TIF is a tax incentive financing. And it's a way to get developers to come into the community and they pay their taxes, but the money goes back into the project. So I don't remember how long it lasts. I believe it's 10 years, it may be 20. But regardless, it helps bring jobs, 300 to 400 jobs into the city if this were to take and come to fruition. Right now, we don't have any TIF. We have no TIFs. That was stated by the Safety Service Director at some previous point in time. So to go ahead and say, let's just move this along, I mean, just because we want to keep face or we want to be friendly or we want to be cooperative, sometimes you
Or we want to protect the TIF.
There is no TIF. We don't have.
Oh, no, there's not going to be.
I think.
All right, hold on. We're not going down that road.
I think it's
going to
important
stay
that
civil.
I just, in response to Mr. Gertz's motion, I think it would be responsible for us to read this amendment at least once this week so they know what we're talking about. So they have an understanding of we're discussing at this time. So if we read this, then the citizens understand what we're talking about. So I'm okay with the first reading this week. I want that to be clear. I'm not saying that we should do ignore the second and third, but I am totally comfortable with the first reading so the citizens understand what we're discussing.
Tom, I can't argue with you about that philosophy or thought, but you know as well as anybody, the mayor could call a special meeting tomorrow night for the second reading and a special meeting on Thursday night for the third reading, and that'd be the end of it.
But then let him make that happen.
But I'm saying, if it's like Mr. Fishesser says, we're not going to do anything for 2 weeks. If that's what we're going to do and that can happen, I can live with what you're saying. But I'm suspect that we're going to end up having special council meetings in the next 2 days to railroad this through. Maybe I'm unfair to people, but it's happened in the past.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Gertz.
Yeah, we had one the day after Christmas. You're right.
Yeah, that's how it works.
I have a motion from Mr. Gertz, seconded by Mr. Lindeman, to put the resolution off and not read it tonight. I'd like to take a roll call.
Mr. Powell?
No.
Mr.
I'd
Gertz?
like to ask a question. Can you go ahead? I'm sorry.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
No.
Mr. Albright?
No.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fishesser?
Yes.
And Mrs. Edichico?
No.
Okay, that motion did not pass, so we will have our first reading this evening. Go ahead and does anyone desire, Mr. Lynn, I'll let you answer this. Do you have a desire to have the whole resolution read or just the header?
I would desire that they understand the whole resolution. I think the people out there need to know where we're going, what we're talking about.
Miss Albright, will you go ahead and read the entire resolution?
A resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a settlement and release agreement with the Reading Community City School District. Whereas a dispute has arisen between the City of Reading, the city, and the Reading Community City School District, the school district, related to certain utility lines that that were not placed underground on the property where the new high school was constructed, the dispute. And whereas on or about May 27th, 2020, a lawsuit was filed in Hamilton County Common Pleas Court captioned City of Reading, Ohio versus Reading Community City School District, case number A-2001996, related to the dispute. And whereas the city and the school district believe it is in the best interest of both organizations to resolve the dispute by entering into a settlement and release agreement.
Hold on there just a second. Keith? Keith from ICRC?
Yep.
Can you make it so that I can share this document on my screen?
Yes.
Do I just hit the share when I'm ready? When you, okay, it looks like I can do it now. Okay, everyone can see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're at now, therefore.
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Reading, Ohio, so many members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, Council of the City of Reading hereby authorizes the Safety Service Director to enter into a settlement and release agreement with the Reading Community City School District relating to the claims that give rise to the dispute. A copy of the settlement and release agreement is attached as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, Council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in any formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public, in full compliance with the applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3. This resolution shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
Okay. Is that Mr. Braun, can you send me the Exhibit A real quick and I will put it up on the screen for a minute or so?
Do you want, I might suggest that we do that at your second reading.
Okay.
My only reason for saying that is that I would like for Mr. Ross to have the opportunity to confirm that the drawing is accurate before we insert it as part of the legislation.
Very good. I think that's a very good reason. Okay. Now there is an agreement. Do we want that read also? Anyone have a problem with not reading the agreement?
Yes, I have a problem. I like to have it read.
Okay, then I will go ahead and share it also. And if you will go ahead and read that also, Ms. Albrink.
Settlement and release agreement. This settlement and release agreement is entered into by and between the City of Reading, Ohio, the city, and the Reading Community City School District, the school district, collectively the parties. Whereas a dispute has arisen between the City of Reading, the city, and the Reading Community City School District, the school district, related to certain utility lines that were not placed underground on the property where the new high school was constructed, the dispute. And whereas on or about May 27, 2020, a lawsuit was filed in Hamilton County Common Pleas Court captioned City of Reading, Ohio versus Reading Community City School District, case number A-2001996, related to the dispute. And whereas the city and the school district believe it is in the best interest of both organizations to resolve the dispute by entering into the agreement. Now, therefore, in consideration of the mutual promises, covenants, and undertakings set forth below, and other good and valuable consideration, the receipt and sufficiency of which the parties hereby acknowledge, the parties hereby agree as follows. Number 1, utility relocation and cost. The city and the school district agree to pay equal shares of the cost of relocating the Duke Energy, Spectrum, and Cincinnati Bell utility lines underground that are currently located on the property where the new high school is located near Bolster Avenue. A drawing depicting the utility lines to be relocated underground as part of this agreement is attached as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference. The total cost to relocate the utility lines underground is estimated to be $49,788.58. The work to be performed relocating the utility lines shall be performed by a contractor selected by the utility providers. A breakdown of the estimated cost for the relocation of the utility lines is attached as Exhibit B and incorporated herein by reference. Number 2, the TIF agreement. The school district agrees that it will support the city granting 100% tax increment real property tax exemption, TIF exemption, for a period of 30 years for the former Dow chemical property and intends to enter into a tax incentive compensation agreement with the city approving the TIF exemption, the TIF agreement. The terms of the TIF agreement, including the amounts of compensation to be paid to the school district in exchange for approval of the TIF exemption, shall be separately negotiated by the parties. The parties each agree to negotiate in good faith, and approval of the TIF exemption and the TIF agreement will not be unreasonably withheld by either party. The initial information related to the project indicates that compensation in the amount of 25% of service payment in lieu of tax revenues will be proposed. And while neither party has agreed to this compensation amount, both parties agree that this is a reasonable initial offer and further agree that the project cannot support and make whole compensation to the school district and agree that such would not be reasonable for the Dow project. Number 3, release by the city. In consideration of this agreement, the city hereby releases and fully discharges the school district from any and all claims, obligations, duties, responsibilities, causes of action, damages, suits, debts, and demands of whatsoever kind or nature in law or in equity, which the city has or ever had, whether now known or unknown, including, without limitation, those arising out of or relating to the dispute. Number 4, release by the school district. In consideration of this agreement, the school district hereby releases and fully discharges the city from any and all claims, obligations, duties, responsibilities, causes of action, damages, suits, debts, and demands of whatsoever kind or nature in law or in equity, which the school district has or ever had, whether now known or unknown, including, without limitation, those arising out of or relating to the dispute. Number 5, dismissal of action. The city shall file an entry of dismissal with prejudice, dismissing all claims related to the lawsuit involving the dispute. The parties will split the court costs. Number 4, enforcement of agreement. This agreement shall be governed by the laws of the state of Ohio. The parties agree that the Hamilton County Common Pleas Court shall maintain jurisdiction over the enforcement of the agreement and any disputes related thereto. Number 5, no admission. The parties acknowledge that this agreement is a compromise of the disputed claims and shall not be construed as an admission of liability on the part of either party. Number 6, entire agreement. This agreement sets forth the entire agreement between the parties hereto and fully supersedes any and all prior agreements or understandings, whether oral or written, between the parties pertaining to the dispute. Any amendment or modification of this agreement must be in writing and executed by both parties. Number 7, counterparts. This agreement may be executed in one or more counterparts, each of which shall be considered an original instrument, and all of which taken together shall constitute one and the same agreement. Execution of this agreement may be completed through an exchange by facsimile, or electronic transmission of the page or pages containing electronic signatures of the parties. Number 8, other actions. The parties shall execute any and all documents necessary or appropriate to effect the terms of this agreement in a reasonable period of time. In witness whereof, the parties have executed this agreement on the dates hereinafter set forth, the latest of which shall constitute its effective date.
Okay. And then this would be where the exhibit, and here's the exhibit for the breakdown on the initial estimate.
Mr. Nesbitt?
Okay, yes?
I did want to tell you, I have sent to Mr. Ross and to you the proposed Exhibit A, and we can have that inserted into the packet for a second reading.
So Mr. Ross did get back and say, yes, that looks accurate?
As soon as he confirms to us, I will have it circulated to council in advance and then included in the packet.
Okay, great. Also noticed in the packet, maybe some of the numbers weren't quite consecutive.
I saw that. We'll include that
Okay.
as part of that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we had our reading. Any motions?
Mr. President, can we make that available? I know you just put it on the screen, but I don't know how involved it would be I think City Hall. I'm not even sure if it's open, but that citizens who would like a copy of the whole resolution and the agreement could secure a copy of it and pay if they have to, some minimal cost for the cost to get it. But there may be many citizens who would like to literally have an original of that or a one to look at. I think that would only be appropriate, as Mr. Lynn pointed out. If we're going to educate people about what it's all about, they ought at least have an opportunity to get one.
I'd like to go ahead and let the administration handle that. But I can't speak for them. So if anybody wanted to go to see, I mean, this is a document that's out there, and I guess the secretaries and at City Hall can go ahead and make copies for anyone.
Okay. Anybody out there wants to get a copy from me within reason, I'll make it for you. Come to my office and I'll give it to you.
Chris,
Do I hear any motions?
Chris, can I ask the question?
Yes, go ahead.
Should we hold our motions for changes to this document until the next reading? For instance, I think that the city should set a limit on how much we're going to spend.
Okay.
We might want to discuss where we pay it from.
That may be another amendment.
Maybe from the service director's salary.
Yeah, now that you all have it, I'm afraid to say those are the only two changes that may come up, and we may be doing changes for a period of time if we were to do that at this time. So I would like to go ahead and say at the next meeting, any changes that come up from your readings, have them prepared, and it'll be the final changes within reason.
Chris,
Yes.
for the formality, I'll make a motion that we suspend the second and third reading.
Okay, without a second, I won't be able to.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Fischescher, seconded by Ms. Edichico, to suspend the rule that requires a second and third reading for this resolution. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Abstain.
Mr. Gertz,
No,
Mr. Lynn,
No.
Mr. Albrecht,
No.
Mr. Lindeman,
No,
Mr. Fischasher,
Yes.
Ms. Edichico.
Yes,
So this will only be the first reading. Mr. Lynn, do you have something?
I just do want to put out a thanks to the treasurer, Miss Lewis. She's been very open. She talks to me. I just want to say the treasurer at Reading High School has been very open and very talkative with me, and I appreciate the time and effort that she's put into this and discussing with me, who is not an accountant, to try and understand a lot of numbers. So I just want to say I think that the school has been cooperative. If you reach out and talk, they will talk with you. And I think they, as public employees, they really help me understand different things also. So I want to put out a thank you to the school. And I understand that I'm trying to consider this. We're looking at this. I just want to make sure it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
I'll second that. I also have Colette's number if anybody would like it. If you want to call her, she is very forthcoming with information, like Tom said, and she'll be happy to discuss it with you. Any questions that you have.
hey, Tom, since you brought that up, I had a question. Did she confirm that these contingency funds are out there?
Confirm that there are contingency funds, but whatever they spend has to be approved by the OFCC. So if they did spend, it would come out of the capital fund, but then they would have to go to the OFCC to get approval to get the money out of the contingency fund.
So there's an opportunity to recover their expenses on this thing. Is that correct?
Or I
That
guess
is
there's an
correct.
opportunity not to recover them either then.
I didn't ask you though. You don't know that. You didn't talk to her.
I just said the opposite of what you said, Mr. Gertz. I don't understand why you're arguing with me.
Well, I did talk to her, and Chris is correct. A lot of the money that is in the contingency is pretty much spoken for the fencing that Mr. Lindeman brought up and other projects that they already have planned to do. And so that money is already allocated for that. That's my understanding from talking with Colette earlier.
But there is possible funds for the pay for this also. That is a possibility and was a possibility when we're talking about amending this.
and if there's any money left in those funds, they can use that for pretty much anything they want to on another project. So any money they save will go to a project of their choosing versus putting the utilities underground. That's my understanding.
And it would have to be approved.
By
Right.
the OFCC.
Yeah.
Right, but if you got money left over, there wouldn't be a lot of reasons for them not to approve it.
Mr. Bryan, can you go ahead and look to make a small adjustment that says we have a maximum out of pocket that the city will spend, which I guess is 1/2 of the 49?
I will change that language, and I will also find out from the Safety Services Director the exact fund number and insert that into that same sentence as part of my changes.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else on this resolution? Then we'll go to the second ordinance, or for the first ordinance.
May I be excused?
Yes, you can. Thank you very much for
Thank you, Mr.
your
Braun.
evening tonight.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Joe, would you give me a call tomorrow?
Thank you, Mr. Braun.
I will.
I'm gonna ring off too, Chris. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Braun, would you give me a call tomorrow?
I will.
I'd like to get some numbers on this exorbitant fees we're paying.
I will call you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Then we will go ahead and have our first reading for the ordinance.
An ordinance establishing fees and charges for 2021 for the City of Reading parks, programs, and recreational facilities and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring a second, third reading.
Second,
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Albrecht, seconded by Mr. Lindeman, to suspend the rule that requires a second and third reading. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
That motion passed.
Motion
Motion
to,
to
Motion to
adopt.
adopt.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Fischescher, seconded by Mr. Lynn to adopt the ordinance. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted and the ordinance number
2021-05. An ordinance amending ordinance 2020-07, which authorizes the safety service director to employ certain temporary, seasonal, and part-time help in declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend.
Motion to suspend the rule requiring a second and third reading.
I'll second.
Okay, I got that second, solid second there. But besides Mr. Fischescher, who else was saying they made a motion?
Mr. Albrecht.
Mr. Albrecht, motion by Mr. Albrecht, second by Ms. Edichico to suspend the rule requiring a second and third reading. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion to adopt.
Second for that second. Motion made by Mr. Lynn. Who said a second?
Albrecht.
Danny.
Seconded by Mr. Albrecht. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance number.
2021-06.
Any other business?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Lindeman.
This last ordinance, I'm assuming this is the pool director and those kind of people, Tom?
The manager, correct.
Okay.
Lifeguards, concession, maintenance.
Thank you.
Without any other business, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.